Yo, you gotta practice your craft, right? Like in my mind, I was already a best-selling author. In my mind, I was already a journalist. I was already popping. Like I had that confidence because if you don't talk that shit, if you don't hone in on, if you don't envision your future, if you can't close your eyes and see ahead of you, that you can't rely on other people for that motivation. It starts with self, right? So even though my grades didn't reflect it, even though I was just doodling in my journal, in my mind, I was already that girl, that woman, and I feel like everything that we are meant to be is already inside us. We just have to tap into it. And don't get me wrong, it was not easy. Like I lived with depression and anxiety for over half of my life. So don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy by any means. But I always say you got to talk yourself into it, even on the days that you don't feel like it. You got to talk yourself into it and you got to do it. Because if we only worked on the days we felt good, we'd never get anything done.
So the question is this: how do thought leaders, school dropouts, former and current students find out what's next after they do or don't cross that stage? If you want to know the secrets to starting the career or business of your dreams, getting paid whatever you desire, and discovering what you do the best with the least amount of effort, then this is the right podcast for you. I'm Shawn Anthony, and this is School's Over. Now What? The podcast. Welcome to School's Over, Now What? The podcast, and I'm your host, Shawn Anthony. If this is your first time, ladies and gents, checking out the show, first off, I just want to say welcome. I'm so glad you clicked that button. Whether right now you are listening to this on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, CastBox, whatever that is for you, we appreciate you. Let me tell you a little bit about this show, though, exactly what we do. Every single Friday, we bring you an inspiring message or we bring you an inspiring person that's going to help unlock those inner thoughts you have. Whether you are someone right now listening to this and you're an entrepreneur-minded individual, you want to take your business to the next level, or if you just graduated college, or perhaps even dropped out, we give you everything you need to make sure that happens. And I'm so excited to have you here on the show. And this has done so much just in the podcast world itself. We have recently reached to 100. Yes, that's right. We've recently reached to the top 100 in podcasts. So if you're listening right now, if you haven't left your 5-star rating and review, this is the perfect time to do so. But each and every single week, I kick the show off with a review of the week. And this one comes from JDavid336. And they wrote, so motivational, so real, so amazing. Take the time to listen. You will not be disappointed. We need more of this in our community. J. David, I appreciate you. And there's so much power in the community. So right now, if you're listening to this, you know someone that could be impacted by these words, perfect time to take a screenshot, post it up on Instagram, and tag me at Shawn R. Anthony _. I will be re-sharing all these messages, and it's one person at a time that helps change the narrative on what happens once education and the school days are over. So let's jump into the reason you clicked that button today. Our guest is none other than Pauleanna Reid. She is a celebrity ghostwriter, a senior contributor to Forbes, and also the founder of New Girl on the Block. And on this episode, we talk a lot about her mentorship program, and she's helping so many millennials do that, even to the point where we define a mentor to a sponsor. This episode and this interview is going to be one of your favorites. So if you're looking or you're listening to this right now, whatever platform it is, go ahead and save it if you are driving your car. But if you are parked, if you are at home, if you are somewhere sitting down, grab your pencil, grab your paper, because she's about to give you so many gems. And quick disclosure, guys, I had a cold while doing this interview, so don't mind the sniffles, it's straight flames. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 51, Practice Your Craft with Pauleanna Reid. Welcome back to School's Over Now with the podcast, and I'm excited. I have somebody here today. She is a speaker, she's an author, and I just think she's overall just phenomenal. Miss Pauleanna Reid is on the show today. How are you?
Hello. I'm fantastic. How are you?
Doing great. So people are looking you up right now. They're searching all through Instagram, trying to find out more about you as we speak. And I want to go back to you as a kid growing up. Tell us a little bit about your background story.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because I feel like our generation is so stuck on titles. We're the CEO, we're the marketing director. So I always try to encourage people to think about and start nurturing who they are beyond it. Right. So I like to say that I'm a millennial woman who has fought for her dreams and won. Right. And I say that because when I was younger, like I was bullied and tormented in school. I was not the cool kid. Dudes were not checking for me. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't fit into the cliques. And so I always felt misunderstood. And so a lot of the work that I do today is from the result of like trying to figure out myself and like sharing similar paths with other millennials of like being stuck in that gray area. Because when we're younger, we're taught that we can be anything and everything we want to be. And then we grow up and we go to high school and everyone's like, nah, bruh, like you need to be a little bit more realistic. And it toyed with my mind. It like totally screwed me over because now that I had to be realistic, I was like, I'm someone who's imaginative. I'm creative. And so for me who's a natural, I color outside the lines, for someone to put me in a box and to label me was very frustrating for me. And that's when downward spiral began.
Wow. So so when people were labeling you and putting you in a box, like where did you feel like that way, like early off in childhood? Was it like high school? What was it for you when you started to feel that way?
Yeah, well, I think in high school, they don't properly prepare you for like what the next stage of your life is. And so I wanted to be a writer. Like I've always known I wanted to be a writer because when I was bullied, I would spend time by myself in the girls' washroom, the library, the cafeteria, and I would journal. So like, this feels good to me. And this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. So, I went to my peers, I went to my teachers, I went to my parents and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. And they're like, what? Like, what's a writer? Like, how can you make money from art? And that's when I started to be like, I started to question myself because on paper it didn't make sense because I actually failed grade 11 and 12, grade 10 science and grade 11 and 12 English.
Wow.
So on paper, they're like, why do you want to be a writer when you're actually not good at writing?
Wow.
And so, but I had that belief in myself. Like I never ever doubted when I would be successful. I just waited. I just knew that like at some point it was going to be my turn. It was not a matter of if I'd be successful. It was about when. But I feel like, oftentimes people just look at you on a surface level, right? And if you don't have that fire and that belief in yourself, like it's pretty much over for you at that point. It all starts with you.
Yeah. So like, what would you tell? Like, there's someone listening to this, and I coach so many people, and I know you're a well-known mentor as well. There's someone that wants to write, trying to figure out an avenue for it. What would you say to that person that may feel discouraged like you did when you were going through that time in your life?
You got to practice your craft, right? Like in my mind, I was already a best-selling author. In my mind, I was already a journalist. I was already popping. Like I had that confidence because if you don't talk that shit, if you don't hone in on, if you don't envision your future, if you can't close your eyes and see ahead of you, then you can't rely on other people for that motivation. It starts with self, right? So even though my grades didn't reflect it, even though I was just doodling in my journal, in my mind, I was already that girl, that woman, and I feel like everything that we are meant to be is already inside us. We just have to tap into it. And don't get me wrong, it was not easy. Like I lived with depression and anxiety for over half of my life. So don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy by any means. But I always say you got to talk yourself into it, even on the days that you don't feel like it. You got to talk yourself into it and you got to do it. Because if we only worked on the days we felt good, we'd never get anything done. So for me, it was just like, it took me 4 years to write my first book, right? So for me, it was like, I was in no rush. Like if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, like I got time and I want to do it right. So I took my time to really nurture and perfect my craft. And I started really simple and really messy. I think a lot of us suffer from analysis paralysis. Like we want things to be perfect and we want a perfectly curated feed or a blog. My blog was a piece of shit. My blog was designed so poorly, but I was proud of it. This is my work. This is my platform. And I made sure that I was consistent. And like unbeknown to me, like the right people were watching and my mentors were the ones that helped me connect the dots. Because I actually dropped out of college. And what people don't know, like I have this like amazing career in writing, but I'm a college dropout. So that just goes to show you that outside of the piece of paper, if you can master those skills, like you'll be okay.
Wow, that's so dope. And I think you touched on so many like huge topics right there. Well, acquiring skills is important and furthering your education is important. But someone that dropped out of college, it seems like you got an advantage by getting the right mentors. What do you would say to that person right now that's trying to figure out, okay, who should my mentor be? What should they look like? What should they be doing? How should they find out who they need on their side?
I think like just like we analyze and assess who we value in a friend and a lifelong partner, you need to apply those same principles to your mentorship relationship. I think that so you need to identify the values that you want in someone. I always say like I don't take business advice from individuals I wouldn't trade bank accounts with, right? I want a mentor who's going to challenge me. Like and there's different types of mentorship. I like a tough love type mentor. I listen to a lot of TD Jakes and Tony Robbins, and like I need to be yelled at, you know. Whereas other people want a more softer approach. So you need to know what's the best fit for you. Just like a pair of shoes or a therapist, you need to know what's a good fit for you. And I like Nisha Moodley says, masters learn from masters. So I honestly think that mentorship, it puts you at an advantage mentally, emotionally, physically. It just changes the game. There is an alarming statistic that I found recently that when it comes to female entrepreneurs, their survival rate declines by 50%, those who don't have a mentor. And so for me, it's like, why do you need to go through the struggle alone, right? Like I have mentors for different areas of my life, and I'm very blessed to have them. And I feel like when you are walking in the direction of your dreams, you will attract, the books will fly off the shelves, the people will walk into your life. Like you will be a magnet to the right individuals. You won't necessarily have to go like searching for them. Another thing I want to say is you can have mentors whether dead or alive, right? Like don't have to like, some people have mentored me and they don't even know they've mentored me. I have like actual mentors with structures in place, but there are people in my life who just by living their best life, they have shown me that I can live mine.
Wow. I mean, like that's straight flames. I mean, there are so many people that we look up to, whether it's somebody on social media that they may not have any idea the fact they've impacted you through their words or anything like that. And I'm pretty sure you're doing it right now with some of the posts that you're doing and people have no idea, but you are impacting those people right now. Somebody just screenshotted this entire podcast. They're sharing it. They're tagging you. And they're definitely going to become fans of Pauleanna. So I got to ask you like the question, because I feel like there's some point in the entrepreneur journey where you hit a now what moment. You hit a wall, you hit a brick. For you, do you feel like, what was that defining moment for you?
So now what? So the defining moment was actually when I've lived with depression pretty much my whole life. And in my senior year of college, I had a very unfortunate incident and I tried to commit suicide. Wow. And so that was because when I recovered and when God granted me that second chance, that was a now what moment. Cause it was like, yo, what you gonna do? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and so I really told myself that this was my life and my dreams are worth it. And I made the decision to drop out of school. And I was like, I'm going to figure this out because I clearly can't depend on the institution. I can't depend on the people around me. I'm going to figure it out. As messy as it may be, as much as I may be broken through the process, like I'm good with that, like, so for me, that was my now what moment. And since then, I've never really looked back. It definitely has not been easy, but I think that like when you bet on yourself and when you trust yourself, you have to also understand that God is working behind the scenes on your behalf. So like all of the accomplishments that I have experienced today are the result of seeds that I planted 10 years ago.
Ooh. I mean, and I think people think after night, they get the highlight reel. They see, what you're doing something today. She's probably been, doing this, but there are times where you have to struggle. And what do you feel like things people can learn from the struggle? Because sometimes you go through struggle, like, why is this happening to me? Why now? Like, what do you feel like you've learned, like just from the struggle?
Honestly, I think the sacrifice. So I feel like when you are forced to make sacrifices financially, maybe it's your living situation, maybe it's the people you cut out of your life, whatever the sleep, anyone who has a personal brand, you are vulnerable to criticism, whatever sacrifices you have to make, it builds mental toughness, right? And you need that mental toughness is required for the next level of your life, right? So like, it's very important that you suck it up, bite the bullet and go through it and grow through it because it's you like there. it's required because we need to build that extra layer of like confidence or resilience in order to get to the next level. So for me, it's like, if I have a really bad day or have a bad month financially or whatever that looks like it's a part of the process, right? Like, what would the process be if it was like seamless and perfect? Like, that's not something that I want, because if you don't go through the struggle, then you don't build any grit.
Hey guys, so let me take a guess. You're enjoying the show. And if that's right, please make sure that you take a screenshot of you listening to the podcast right now and tag me at ShawnRAnthony_. I promise you this is going to help in amazing ways. And while you're at it, hit the 5-star rating and subscribe. With that being said, guys, let's get back to the show. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you're obviously somebody who's worked their way from the bottom to the top. I mean, look at you now as a senior contributor for Forbes. And you talk about your blogs in the past, right? And how they weren't the best. They didn't look good. When was it when you started to track steam? And you're like, you know what? I'm really doing good at this.
So I had my blog for a year, and I had a mentor who really took me under her wing, and she encouraged me. She's like, hey, if you want to be a writer, then you need to show the world that you want to write. So then I started the blog. After about a year, she picked up the phone and she called me and she's like, hey, I have a connection to a publishing house. And this will be an opportunity where you can be a real journalist. You can be published in every major newspaper across the country. Is this something that you want? And so I said yes, right? And the thing is, like, you always have to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Like, another thing that I like to say is that, like, you don't know who's watching, what power they hold. So, like, if you don't get likes, comments, shares, it doesn't matter. Like, continue to do the work. She made a life-changing phone call that allowed me to have a platform of several 100,000 readers across the country for the next like 3 or 4 years. So when I got comfortable, when I got my first taste at journalism, that's when I was like, wow, like I actually have something here. And then this was like back in 2009, 2010. So the content was emerging, right? And so, yeah, like I was like, okay, like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Man, it's so dope and so cool. And it just shows you guys that are listening right now that you don't have to fall into the love of, oh, I didn't get this many likes on this photo, or, oh, this person didn't, they didn't see what I'm doing. They didn't comment. It's all about those one set that a person that might just be watching may have no idea who they are. So truly, thank you for saying that. There's a movement right now that I think that's happening. So I've interviewed so many people, the millionaires, the celebrities, you name them. But there's a movement happening right now that I'm noticing, and I'm wondering, are you noticing it as well, is the rise of the Black female entrepreneur being showcased. And a lot of people that I talk to, we're noticing that, these women are revolutionary. They're changing the game. What would you say about that female right now who's looking up to, Pauleanna, who's looking up to, being somebody that can, change the world? What would you say to that person that needs that motivation? But most importantly, what are you noticing from the female entrepreneur at these days?
Yeah, I think female entrepreneur, well, I'm in the space of, I'm an entrepreneur, like I have a business, but I also have a mentorship program. And like, I think that more female entrepreneurs, women of color specifically, we are reaching back and we're helping those that are coming up behind us. And we're finding joy in doing that. And because the thing is, like, a lot of people did or did not do that for us. But we're finding that like a lot of these young people can't be what they can't see. And sometimes, if I'm going on a speaking tour, or if I'm doing something in regards to my career, I will put it out on social media. Like, hey, does anyone want to job shadow me? Like, I'm always willing to put someone on a plane. I'm always willing to take someone with me, because it's that on the ground training and experience that they might not have ever had if I did not put the call out there. But what I'm also seeing from the younger generation is that like they're fired up, like they're ready. They want the opportunities. And I have so much love and appreciation for someone who has every single reason to throw in the towel, but they don't, So that gets me fired up, and I'm more than happy to help people who bet on themselves and truly want to win and put in the work.
That's crazy. I mean, that's crazy good. And I'm pretty sure somebody just slid in your DMs and asked you, hey, can I get on that plane ride? One thing I can say is that it's truly, an amazing thing and an amazing accomplishment to even, say that. And what I'm finding out is that proximity really changes everything. Like getting next to that person and getting next to that mentor and in a physical form, it's actually allowing people to accelerate themselves. Would you agree with that?
100%. Like my mentors, like they have been tremendous in my life, but like I think the thing is, like, as a mentee, you also have a responsibility to take initiative. You also have the responsibility to be very observant. Your mentor does not need to spell everything out for you. Sometimes you just learn by doing. You have to ask the right questions. Like, I have a call with one of my mentors for 1 hour once a month. And it's the best hour that I look forward to every single month because, I come up with my questions. He fires back. We have dialogue. And it's like I got everything I need. And it's my responsibility as a mentee to come back to the table with what I've worked on. What does my portfolio look like? How have I grown and expanded, right? This is not just a one-way street because mentors don't owe you anything. They're not obligated to tell you anything. So I think as a mentee, people need to realize that like what your responsibility is and to go above and beyond. Volunteer for your mentor. How can you solve a problem for your mentor? Look at the white space and see how you can contribute value to the table. It's super important. But when you get someone who bets on you and invests in you, you have an advantage over everybody else.
Man, that's so real. And that's so real. And I'm loving the fact that you're going on a complete rant about mentorship because that is what I think people are missing. You can read all the books in the world. You can go to college for 4 years, but there could be a connection for you that can change your life quicker than any of those things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight there's a difference between mentors and sponsors. So my mentors operate as both. I'm very fortunate. But a mentor is someone who guides your steps, gives you advice, and that's cool. But a sponsor is someone who advocates for you when you're not in the room. A sponsor is someone who sends the introduction email. A sponsor is someone who picks up the phone and makes that phone call, invites you to the event to meet the CEO. A sponsor will move the needle in your life. So I think it's important for people to identify like who are your mentors, who are your sponsors, who are the people that can occupy both spaces.
Great. And I think that's also something that no one's ever done on the show. You gave a complete definition of the differences there. They're like, what? I've never heard that. So I want to ask you the question we've asked every single person, like every single person that's ever gotten this show. We've always asked this question. And I'm curious for you, like if you were that person who is still in school right now, and right now we're currently sitting in the month of May, you just graduated, or perhaps, like a young Pauleanna, you dropped out. What advice would you give that person asking themselves the question of the podcast, school's over, now what? What advice would you give?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you have a piece of paper or not, there are so many skills that you need to adapt to and acquire to make it in what I like to call the matrix. Like, honestly, like number one, know who the hell you are before you enter the matrix. Do that self-work. There's a level of emotional intelligence and self-awareness, right? And I mean, mind you, when you're graduating, you are still trying to figure out who you are as a man or a woman. I get it. But it doesn't mean you can't start that journey then, right? Because once you enter the matrix, the world of social media, the job market, like it's a lot. It'll swallow you up. You need to know who you are so you can be grounded and have a foundation because you can't build anything on a shaky foundation. The next thing I would say is like, hone in on your communication skills, right? Don't be an asshole. Be nice to everybody. Stay curious. Stay hungry. I think that when you're in that window between 20 and 25, that is like the best time of your life. You can mess up. You can make mistakes. You can bounce back. You likely have like, you don't have a mortgage yet. You likely don't have any big bills yet. Like travel, volunteer, experiment. Like don't put so much pressure on yourself to have these milestones by certain ages because number one, it never works out that way. And number two, like I always tell like young people, like allow yourself to like get messy, allow yourself to discover the beauty in the chaos, right? Because you don't grow up so fast. Like, like I think that there's something to be said about having life experiences because that when you enter your 30s, like in my 20s, I lived, okay? Like I did everything. I made incredible sacrifices. Don't get me wrong. But I also like made sure that I went out of my way to have enriched experiences. Now in my 30s, like, I can live fly in my 30s because I did all that in my 20s. Like, I can like hone in and focus. So I think that if you haven't figured out what your purpose is, don't freak out about it. And I think that it'll naturally come together. The puzzle pieces of your life will come together as long as you keep moving forward.
Facts, straight flames, the entire episode. I appreciate you having you on the show. If someone right now wants to know more about you, where can they find you? Where can they find your mentorship? Where can they find about you speaking? Can you give us all of that info?
Yeah, sure. So my name is really unique. So I'm like the first 10 pages on Google. So you can literally just Google me. I'm on every single platform. I have a vlog on YouTube. I have a podcast on SoundCloud. You can go on my website. My mentorship program is called New Girl on the Block. So you can go to newgirlontheblock.com. And then I run a communications agency, which is a full service ghostwriting firm. So anyone who's looking for assistance on freelance projects, you can hire me there.
Phenomenal. And for those of you listening, always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it. Yo, what you think? I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I want to know what you learned. So if you wouldn't mind, would you take a screenshot of you listening to the podcast on your phone right now? Upload to your Instagram stories, tag me at ShawnRAnthony_, and then let me know in that Instagram story what is one thing that you learned. I love hearing from you, my listeners, thought leaders, former or current students all around the world. Let me know, and while you're doing this, go inside the podcast app, subscribe, leave a 5-star review and a 5-star rating. Again, this helps us reach more people. And if you want to be a part of this mission, helping us change the world one person at a time, it makes a massive difference by you leaving a review. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week. And remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it.